Unreasonable search and seizure. That's a thing that most democracies have clauses against in their Constitution or Bill of Rights. In the United States, for example, it is the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. The key word here is people. It means the government cannot snatch your stuff without a warrant. But this is a problem, because if the police wants to seize your property, they normally have to go to a judge specifying which place, persons, and property are concerned and provide a probable cause or evidence for a criminal conviction. But the government was thinking, what if instead of charging the people, we charge their possessions? A very big brain idea. You see, you as a person have constitutional rights, like presumption of innocence or right to an attorney. But your property doesn't have a right to an attorney. It's not even presumed to be innocent. This is fantastic. The only dilemma was, how do you call this loophole? Theft? Tyranny? State terror?
Stop! You violated the law.
That won't go well with the kids. We call it civil asset forfeiture. If you want a short explanation, it is a way for the government to seize billions of dollars in property, possessions, or cash with no due process, no evidence of crime, no charges or convictions. Cash, cars, homes, phones, computers, TVs, prepaid debit cards, and even entire account balances can be wiped clean and put to use by whatever seizing authority. The government can keep your stuff, use it or sell it, and there's next to nothing you can do about it. If you want to get your stuff back, you have to prove your innocence, which is impossible because you can't prove a negative. But even if you try, you'd often have to spend more money on appeal fees and lawyers than the value of your seized assets. This sounds like a police state, but keep in mind, if it's in the United States, it cannot be police state by definition. It's law and order. Yeah! If you are here to understand the true scope of this nightmarish practice, don't mind if you fall into an endless spiral of anxiety and crippling depression. And speaking of crippling depression, have you noticed that I've never had any sponsors? That's because I want to remain independent, so if you'd like this channel to keep existing, please consider your support. Monero, Bitcoin, engagement, or Patreon, it all counts, so thank you. Side note, unseizable donations are preferred. But hold on, can the government really take whatever they want without a warrant? Yes, and it's a lot worse than you might think. Civil asset forfeiture has been in practice for decades, and its scope has only been expanding. It was initially inspired by the English Crown issued writs of assistance from the colonial period. It gave those English bastards permission to seize whatever they deemed contraband from people's homes and vessels. That and taxes was one of the key grievances behind the American Revolution. The promise of the new Bill of Rights was to prohibit this practice. Unfortunately, the American Revolution didn't manage to get rid of neither the taxes nor this kind of forfeiture. Why? Those damn pirates were too annoying, so the Congress approved civil forfeiture against their vessels. You see, when owners are in a different part of the planet, it's easier to prosecute their vessels rather than the owners themselves. After a few decades, this practice fell dormant for 2 centuries with only brief revivals, but it was never disallowed. Until the drug war in the 1970s, when law enforcement was finally granted powers to seize property related to production of legal drugs. Later amendments expanded these seizures to money and then to anything that could have been purchased with tainted funds, whether or not it was connected to criminal activity. Most people targeted with civil asset forfeiture used to be drug lords and bosses of organized crime. But here is an issue. If the police is focusing on illegal drugs, most they ever seize is drugs, which then have to be destroyed. Drug proceeds have no monetary value to law enforcement, but cash, electronics, guns, cars, real estate, all of that can be auctioned for sale or used directly by the police. So, to incentivize more policing, because that's a wonderful idea, in the beautiful year of 1984, literally, the Congress passed Comprehensive Crime Control Act that established equitable sharing. This permitted local, state, and federal officers and prosecutors to keep a large percentage of the seized asset and share them among each other. Since 9/11, civil forfeiture expanded once more to include all matters related to homeland security. And in the early 2000s, dozens of private companies began providing training to law enforcement at all government levels on how and what kind of assets to seize. From federal terrorist investigation to local traffic stop, police anywhere can seize property for any minor infraction or suspicion. And that's how we got to today, an 18th century practice meets 21st century technology. What could possibly go wrong? Civil forfeiture today can be authorized for literally anything. Underground gambling, minor traffic violations, cockfighting, dog racing, broken taillight, nothing at all, or just being an unwitting bystander. If a cop looks at you the wrong way, please bend over and spread those cheeks. Today's forfeiture targets are no longer drug lords or organized crime bosses, but your regular middle-class schmucks who've never had any trouble with the law. In most states studied, half of cash seizures are below $1,000. Gotta get those criminals off the streets, right? Well, no, you're only taking their stuff. The criminals can roam free, and they are not even criminals, they are just law-abiding citizens with no criminal charges filed against them. Trust me, this is not a police state. It cannot be.
Mein Führer, was Sie da sagen ist ungeheuerlich.
Civil asset forfeiture has grown to become a meticulously collaborative effort between different law enforcement agencies and private organizations. After the police seizes your property or cash, it goes to the judge where it is granted forfeiture, if it ever gets reported in the first place, and ownership is transferred to district attorney. The DA's office then splits the money or proceeds from the sale of your property with their own office and the local police. All of this can happen even if you were acquitted in criminal court or even before you had a chance to stand trial. Reports found that up to 81% of forfeitures resulted in no indictment. The most unbelievable part of civil asset forfeiture is that seizure of physical possession often happens when legal owners are not even present. It is estimated that between 50 to 80% of cars forfeited were not driven by their owners. So be careful who you lend your car to and pray to all gods it will never get stolen because you might lose it forever. Not to thieves, but to cops. Somehow the police manages to seize more assets from people than burglars. But come on, man! Surely, if the police officers know you haven't done anything wrong, they'll return everything back and all is fine, right? No, that's not how law and order works, my friend. This is how law and order works. By default, you are not getting your stuff back. You have to challenge the seizure on your own, which is a painstaking, hair-pulling, anxiety attack-giving process that can take several years. Challenging the forfeiture requires first that you pay an appeal fee, which can be as high as thousands of dollars. You would also have to hire a lawyer to take the government to court and fight for months or even years, all the while your property could be in use by complete strangers. And that is only if you're lucky to sue, because 40% of appeals require that owners pledge not to sue the police over seizures. Most appeals won't make it through the first hearing anyway because, get this, the first hearing doesn't go through the judge but the prosecutor whose office shares the proceeds from forfeiture. Don't worry, there is no conflict of interest here at all. This is why less than 1 in 6 seizures are legally challenged. The police know this, so they often target assets valued at a lower cost than the defendants would have to pay to get them back. All the police have to say is they suspect the property of being connected to a criminal activity. The burden of proof is on you to provide evidence that your possession is legal and legitimate, which is often impossible. And even if you go through an appeal, in up to 2/3 of the cases, you're not getting your stuff back. In 43 states, police and prosecutors can keep anywhere from half up to all of the proceeds from civil forfeiture. But hold on, why is it possible that civil forfeiture works this way? Doesn't the Fourth Amendment protect you from unreasonable search and seizure? It does, to an extent, but the Bill of Rights applies to people. It doesn't apply to objects. You see, the government charges your property, not you as a person. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it wasn't just a meme. Even official court filings do not have your legal name, but rather the name of the seized assets. Incredible? Yes. Police state? Yes. The police have more than enough ways to bypass any oversight or legal limits on civil forfeiture in your state or local law. Under the Equitable Sharing Program, all they have to do is to call a federal agency like DEA or ICE, which then quote-unquote adopts the case, takes 20% of the proceeds of adopted seizures, and the rest goes to local police. No one asks any questions, and your forfeiture is now under federal law. In many cases, police and prosecutors are responsible for self-reporting with no additional oversight. And because they both benefit from seizures, they are incentivized to underreport or misreport their forfeitures, and many offices keep no inventory of forfeited items. As thousands of individual agencies across the United States are responsible for their own reporting, they often bury this information in budgets, court records, and annual reports. The true scale of this practice is thus unknown, but just for the Department of Justice, annual revenue gains from forfeiture proceeds went from $27 million in 1985 to $4.7 billion in 2012. The world should have ended by then, but unfortunately it didn't, because civil asset forfeiture continues to be a multi-billion-dollar venture for law enforcement. Introducing profit incentive into policing naturally opened the door for officers to begin abusing it for their own benefit. This structure is completely broken. In LA, reports found the police were prioritizing asset forfeiture over the safety of the general public. Records describe how officers would often wait for a drug sale to be concluded and then seize cash from the sale rather than the drugs. One sheriff in Oklahoma extorted $10,000 found in a car from two motorists in exchange for releasing them from jail, where the sheriff put them after finding the cash and arresting them for drug possession during a traffic stop. Were they ever charged? Absolutely not. In Detroit, cops routinely waited out minor misdemeanors and then seized cars during ticketing. Cars worth hundreds of times more than the actual fines. Disproportionate punishment? Yes. Police state? Yes. No. If you're stopped for a broken taillight, any cash you might have on you can fall into the hands of the police. That's how the police once seized over $53,000 from a Christian charity or $75,000 from a Chinese businessman. If you keep money on a prepaid debit card, police are now equipped with devices to covertly wipe your balance and collect your payment card details connected to your bank account. They can do it instantly for any traffic stop and won't even have to tell you about that. Police cannot wipe your bank account this way, but that's what the IRS is for. A mere bank statement showing a cash deposit of less than $10,000 can get your account frozen, forfeited by the taxman. No prior warning, no criminal charge. Only 1 in 5 seizures of accounts with such cash deposits have been prosecuted. Plenty of small cash-intensive businesses had to go through the pains and anxiety of dealing with this. Can you imagine running a hot dog stall only to find out that the IRS seized all of your revenue? One family-run candy distributor lost almost $500,000 this way. There's nothing illegal about depositing less than $10,000, but still, bend over and spread your cheeks for the IRS because law and order wants to seize whatever is inside. Officially, proceeds from seized assets should go towards enhancing police investigation. Among many permissible uses are automatic weapons, surveillance tech, night vision, gas grenades, sniper gear, Humvees, armored vehicles, and other good stuff that turns your local police department into an occupying military force. But citizens' assets have also been used to pay for donuts, luxury vehicles, travel, and somehow even this clown named Sparkles. That's not a joke. Cops took someone's money and used it to pay for Sparkles over here. Police departments and prosecutors routinely write their own wish list for items they look to seize. Phones and jewelry are not worth it, but flat-screen TVs are very popular. If they see a nice car they want to put to use, they look for opportunities to justify seizing it. An Atlanta sheriff got a $70,000 Dodge Charger Hellcat that he used to solely drive to and from work. In Oklahoma, a prosecutor used to seize money to pay for their student loans and live rent-free in a confiscated house for years, even after judge ordered it sold at an auction. It is nearly impossible to track what the government agencies do with the seized assets. From the Justice Department forfeitures, less than a third goes to compensating victims. Most states don't disclose anything about how they spend forfeiture proceeds, but in at least 6 of those that do disclose data, none of them went back to victims. For majority of law enforcement agencies, forfeiture proceeds simply become a part of their budgets, and as much as 20% of law enforcement budgets can come from forfeited funds. It is technically not allowed, but no major sanctions have ever been imposed on law enforcement for this accounting. No simple solution to civil asset forfeiture is in sight. Not even legalizing drugs would make this fundamentally better, as police could always argue mere possession raises their suspicion, and that's enough for your assets to be forfeited. And IRS always has a backdoor into your bank account and can ruin your life at any moment. This is state terror. There is no other way to go about it. Cryptocurrency is the only major disruption to the government's ability to claim your money. Cold storage, Bitcoin, or even better, Monero wallet is the most bulletproof solution. If you don't keep your coins on an exchange and know how to keep your wallet secure, they won't be able to seize your funds. And with Monero, they won't be able to prove or see you have any funds in your wallet. This is not a financial advice. Civil asset forfeiture needs to be done away with. Criminal forfeiture already exists, so there is no need to bypass the Constitution and civil protection it grants to citizens. But it might take another decade for this practice to go away. Permissionless, decentralized cryptocurrency fundamentally disrupts government overreach. There is always going to be too much hype around price manipulation and scam projects. But the real reason Bitcoin or Monero exist is not gains or memes. It's fundamental freedom and civil rights. It might take years or decades for these projects to fully mature, but their principles are the real solutions. Permissionless, decentralized, open source. That's what gives you the power to protect your rights. If nothing else, at the very least, civil asset forfeiture proves you can't trust your own government with your property. If you made it here, you're a hero. thank you for that. Please consider supporting my channel with engagement, sharing the video, or donating some Monero, Bitcoin, or by becoming a patron. Thank you.